Alrighty, you guys have fulfilled your part, so I shall fulfill mine. It is Josh Munch here, and we got to 65 likes on our last tier list video within only 2 days, which is pretty incredible. So we're gonna bump that number up a bit because obviously you guys have shown that you are more than capable of achieving that. So let's bump it up to, let's say, 90. We'll say 90 likes on this tier list guide, and we will expedite the very next tier list video. Anyway, today we're going to be doing a look at Legion bots. We're going to be making a tier list guide. Obviously, Legion bots are kind of new, kind of untested and unrefined, a little bit more of just a theory rather than an absolute of how they're going to stay, right? There's a lot of balancing that still needs to be done with them. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a lot of changes happen in the future with these bots, but for now, I'm going to give you my impressions of them and just where I see them as they are currently. So we're going to be starting off with the Belcher. The Belcher is actually a pretty decent unit. It spews out napalm that lands on the ground and does area of effect damage over time. And so that can be pretty effective for area denial and just slowing down spam, making it so that you can't really aggress upon a certain location. Really good in corridors where there's limited amounts of mobility. However, this bot is really bad in comparison to the vehicle version. The vehicle version spews out a massive amount of napalm. I think it does like 3 different lines of napalm that it shoots, and it also has an extremely long range, whereas this is a much shorter range unit. Not quite as effective as you would have with the vehicle version. However, it is cheaper and it is faster. So I'm going to put it in B tier. It's not going to make it up into A or S because it just kind of falls off a late game, as it doesn't have quite the same amount of range that you need to actually make it effective in the late game. Next, we got the Ballista. This is a T1 unit. Rocket bot. This is going to S tier. It is extremely tanky, extremely strong at taking hits, which is really powerful for rocket bots because rocket bots, you know, they can outrange light laser turrets. They can outrange most other units, but they are somewhat fragile and they don't have a lot of DPS per second. So having a tanky rocket bot that's actually able to take the hits and dish out that longer range fire is pretty significantly strong for the Legion faction here. Now, another thing to keep in mind is a lot of the metal costs for Legion are a little bit smaller than you might find with Armada or Cortex. And part of that is because the Legion has less metal per mechs, which means that they don't quite have as much metal to spend. And so if you're looking at these and wondering what on earth is going on with how cheap they are, that is one of the main reasons why. All right, next we got the flanks. This is a shotgun. This is a shotgun bot. Think of it similar to the shock bot for Armada, and they serve essentially the same purpose. The one difference is they do have a shield which absorbs a little bit of damage, and I think the shields might have a recharge rate as well. But honestly, when it comes to playing with these units, they are T2, and so they're at the point in time in the game where you're going to be needing these units. You're not so worried about the shield and absorbing hits and then hiding them away. You're more worried about being able to go and do damage, right? So, and these are not great at actually getting up there and doing damage. They're kind of slow. They have a really short range as it's a shotgun unit. And there's a lot of things that are very similar to that reason that why you wouldn't probably use them for anything except for anti-spam. Maybe if you were in a really tight area with a lot of hills and a lot of areas you can maneuver around with terrain, maybe they'll be a little bit more useful, but commonly, and especially in open areas, you're not going to want to build these very often. I'm going to put them in B tier, and they are borderline C tier. I like them. I like the damage that they do. I like their potential, but they're just not that effective. So they're like in the middle to me there. All right, mobile heat ray. This guy, it's the incinerator. It's a T2 again, and he has the long range, which is nice, and it is a consistent fire. They used to have a glitch in their scripting where they would constantly target, like while they're swinging their beam around to hit the enemy, it would be hitting their allies very, very frequently. They kind of fix that so that their targeting is better. And these are better than they were, but they don't have good health. They really are kind of weak. They cost a lot. And the DPS is good on them, and the range is decent, but they just don't usually have enough to stick in the fight as far as health goes. They definitely have to be backed up. It's going to go in the B tier. Next, we've got the Strider. This is S tier. Okay, it's kind of like the Fiend. Think of it like a Fiend, but a little bit stronger, a little bit tankier. It has really good damage per second, and it actually has decent anti-air capability, as it's able to go up against Shuris and easily wipe them out. It has 2 machine gun turrets on the side that just can point up and shred Shuriken. So very, very powerful units, very, very fast units, and they have a very strong health pool that is able to sustain as pushing while also pushing the enemy. Okay, so very powerful. Next we got, I'm trying to remember the name of this. This is a sniper bot. Let me see 1 second. I gotta pull up the name here. I wrote them all down because I knew this would happen. Arquebus. I probably am saying that wrong. If I am, I'm sorry, but I did the best I could. Arquebus. And these are a railgun. Think of them similar to the sniper bot, as they have a longer reload time. They do cost a lot of energy to fire, and they do a decent like damage at longer range. They have lower range than a sniper bot. They have lower DPS than a sniper bot, I believe. And they do cost just about as much. So, like, a sniper bot's definitely S tier, but the Arquebus is, I mean, I would go A or B. Honestly, I'm more tempted to go B tier with them because they get outranged by snipers, which is kind of a big deal, especially if they have vision of them, like line of sight. That's kind of a big deal. So that's going to be B tier. We might honestly not even have that many units in the D tier or C tier. We'll see how this goes. I have a couple that I have some unkind words to say. We'll just say that. Okay, we got the Infestor here. The Infestor is the spider bot for Legion. And they are very unique in the fact that they can replicate themselves. I've done a video on this in the past as well. So if you just go to my channel and type Infestor or the Zombie of Bar, that's kind of what I dubbed this guy as a nickname. He's the Zombie of Bar. If you want to, you can check that out. Anyway, these guys are crazy because you can get up behind the enemy lines where you're not really expecting an attack. If there's like hilly terrain or something, or maybe even walk around the corner of a map that you're not expecting. And you can actually replicate behind the enemy lines and then push in and attack. So that is something that's interesting and unique about these units. I'm probably going to stick them in A tier because of that unique abilities. As far as like damage per second, they're okay. They are spiders, so they can't be shuried very easily. And they can replicate and they can reclaim. So they are pretty good. I'd say they're on par with the Weber almost, but they just, I don't know, for their purpose, like the damage, they don't really have that much damage, and they aren't really that health like filled. They're kind of weak, so kind of tactical, situational, but overall very good units. Okay, next, trying trying to remember the name of this guy. Scuttle or something. This is a brand new. It's not the Scuttle. This is a absolutely brand new one that I haven't used much. A Snapper. That's what they called it. The Snapper. And the Snapper is I did some tests. They're exactly the same as the Armada bomb. The Armada amphibious bomb, exactly the same. I think there might be a slight energy difference in the cost, but their DPS is almost exactly the same. So that's a C tier, just because they're situational. They're not as good at land attacks, and I mean, they're good for taking out boats, especially if they don't have depth charges, but they're not going to be as strong at taking out land targets. So kind of a situational unit. Next, we got the Lobber. Oops. The Lobber is a very, very weak plasma bot, but also a very cheap plasma bot. And I am not a huge fan of the Lobber. In time past, I would definitely have put the Lobber in D tier. At this point, I think they're probably going to be a C tier unit. People might disagree with that. People might be like, he is at least a B or A, and I get it, but I just have had really bad luck with the Lobbers in the past, and I don't love them. I don't love how they work. I don't love the damage they have, and their health pool is just so small. You never have a chance to repair them, and they're just kind of a throwaway unit, in my opinion. That I mean, you have to treat them kind of like a pawn, and they don't have the damage. The one thing they do have going for them is a little bit more range than other units. Like, they can outrange a pawn, they can outrange a grunt, but it's just the damage and the fact that it's a plasma bullet and doesn't always hit the target kind of makes that a little bit tougher to use. Caronus, I want to put him in D tier. I know a lot of people are like really like the Caronus, but I don't. I've tested him. I wanted to like him. He does have a shield, but he is so slow. So basically, he has a long-range heat ray laser that he can shoot. He has also a concussive shell that he can launch into the enemy line, but it's a shorter range. Think of it like a Janus missile. It's like one of those knockback shells. And he can shoot, so he has two different types of weapons. One's a longer range, a laser fire, and one is a concussive shell that he will knock back opponents with at close range. The problem is his laser is not that strong. His laser doesn't do that much damage. And so you have to get within range of both weapons for him to be worth it. He has limited range as well. Like, I guarantee you, if you go up with the rocket bot, if you use the Ballista versus the Caronus, you're going to shred the Caronus every time. And that's because he's slow, he has limited range, and he has limited DPS. So it's just really hard to actually get in there and make him effective. I always struggle using this unit. I want him to be good, but I've just been steamrolled so many times by just having the Caronus just getting crushed. Moving on, not a huge fan of the Caronus. Okay, Goblin. Goblin, I'm going to put in A tier. Some people might say he's better than a tick. I disagree. I think he is a little bit weaker than a tick. I think he does have good range. He does have a burst fire, so he can go in and out of combat, which is kind of nice. But he doesn't have very much HP. I think head-to-head against pawns, he loses. Just because the pawns, if they don't have like some strange advantage with like range and stuff, or like, you know, using that range advantage, pawns are just going to be able to come up on him and take him out pretty fast. I like the Goblin versus a lot of the other units that are available for Legion. Honestly, he's just, I don't know. I don't build him every game. And the games that I do build him, he does pretty well, but he's not like super, super strong. I'm not going to push him to the front of the line, right? Next, we got the Centaur. And the Centaur is kind of an interesting unit, honestly, because he has really good burst damage, but he has extremely short range. He's also extremely fast. So in certain situations, he's an S tier unit. But if he doesn't have a way to break through and push the enemy's line, then if he can't get through the front line, he doesn't have the health or the range to really do much. So it's something where you have to create a hole in the front line, push him through really heavily, and try to get an advantage. Punch through the defense and then hit the economy. He's very good at taking out economy. The burst cannon that he does have is extremely strong, so don't underestimate him. And if you see one of them going for your economy line, you better be scared because they're very strong. So I'm gonna put him A tier. I think he's a very good unit, but he is kind of situational, as you have to create a hole for him to charge through. Next, we got the McCade. The McCade is a T3 unit. And I would say probably S tier for the McCade. He has 3 different types of guns. He has Gatling guns on the front and back of his spine. He's like a big long spider, right? So on the front and back, he has Gatling guns. Excuse me. On the very top, the head and the tail of the top, he has 2 rail guns on them. So those can shoot air and those can shoot ground, and they do pretty good damage. It's very similar to the Arquebus or whatever. And so it's kind of like bonus damage on top of that. And then you also have on the center, there's 2 missile turrets on the side. Think of them kind of like a recluse missile barrage, but they're a little bit stronger, a little bit higher DPS. With that, and so he's very good. He has a lot of answers to basically any issue that you can come up with. He can take out air, he can take out spam, he can take out heavier units. He's very strong, and he also has pretty good maneuverability. So those are all really good benefits to the McCade. I'm gonna put him in S tier, especially for Legion. This is purely Legion T3, And there's only 2 options. The next is the Petorian. A to B tier, honestly, with the Petorian, just because he has really good like area control, but he's kind of lackluster in heavy damage towards one target. So spam, stay away from the Petorian. If you have a bunch of grunts, keep them away from the Petorian. He's going to napalm launch. He has like napalm cannons on, I believe, the shoulders. And so he can just do a big barrage of napalm across the whole map and like wipe out any T1 army that's pushing. And then he also has, I believe, some machine guns on him as well, similar to the McCade. And so those are pretty good at taking out, your standard, like heavier units, lighter, medium to heavy units. And then you also have the rail guns as well, which can take out air and heavier tanky units as well. So he is pretty good, but I think he's honestly a little bit worse than the McCade, in my opinion. Just how I feel about it. Anyway, thank y'all for watching. Like I said, if we get to 90 likes on this video, then I will be fast tracking the next tier list. I have a whole bunch of tier list plans coming up. I have tier lists for turrets. I have tier lists for economy buildings. Well, not just economy buildings, just every building in the game. I have tier lists for even like different types of factions, what the different factions and some of their strong. I might do like a comparison tier list between like all 3 factions, things like that. So I got a bunch of plans on that. If you guys would like to see that, definitely drop a like. And once we get to 90, I will fast track this up as the next video. And if that doesn't happen, then we'll pump it out when we get time, and we'll be working on some other guides instead. Anyway, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, definitely subscribe, and we will see you guys on the battlefield.